Hi, everybody. Welcome to session number 4 for Lockdown. Yes. And I'm going to assume because we're going to be in level 3 for another 2 weeks that I'll be doing a couple more of these anyway. So hooray for more. Today's session is a little bit different from the ones that we've done previously. So what I wanted to do today was go through how do you make a module feel like it belongs with your company's branding. So I get a lot of questions from people asking for the ability to, can I add a logo here? Or how do I put a logo on a slide so that it looks nice? My immediate reaction, which is usually tempered with some nice soft words, is just don't. The logos actually, as much as you love them and as much as they represent your company, they take up valuable real estate on your online learning material. So, and that's for any layout that you use, whether you're dealing with something that's really responsive or the setup that we have where you're more paginated. It takes up a lot of valuable room and often detracts from the learner's attention on the wording. It also can be a little bit difficult to format them in a way that fits on different image backgrounds. So my advice there is to actually think more about what your overall brand feels like and design your content to fit within that area. So what I'm going to do today, and hopefully the SPCA don't mind, as they're one of our clients and they have quite nice branding that's very clear and crisp, I wanted to use them as an example and go through with you what we do internally when we're doing design work for someone. And it's the first time that we've had them as a client. So I'll just give you a bit of internal monologue as to what I look at when I'm going through and branding the sites, but also creating template slides for you guys. So we'll talk about those a little bit as well. Right, for starters, and thank you for Christy and Holly from the SPCA, they're here. So thank you guys. I didn't ask permission. I hope you don't mind if we use you guys as an exemplar for this session.
Oh God, I hope we've done things right.
No, you're good. You're good. You're in the clear.
Thanks, Lauren.
No worries, Lauren.
Awesome. Okay, so for starters, what I'll do is share my screen. That always helps. Just about forgot to do that. Okay. So this is SPCA New Zealand's website. And this is where Nevin or myself, we always start by coming to a company's website to have a look at kind of what the overall feel is for the brand. This isn't a really in-depth kind of thing. It's more of, let's look at the whole thing holistically and see how it feels. What we look for are specifically what colors are used for functional buttons. Can we grab, or do we already have, ideally we already have, but if we don't, can we grab a logo that's going to work? We look at how you guys use fonts on your websites. We also look at how you use pictures in conjunction with other graphical elements. So SPCA, being an organization that's got it together and seems to have a pretty good marketing department as well, they have a very clean site. It's very nicely put together. It's very easy to get around. And the branding is really obvious. As you work your way through, you can see that this nice royal blue is everywhere. And they use photos in a really, really nice way. So I've talked to you guys about the whole rule of thirds before. This is an example of it in real life. So this image, this left-hand third is the actual image. The right hand is the functional, the form. So that's an example for how you use the rule of thirds when you're designing something for a website, not just for content. So you can see that they've got a lot of really nice kind of graphics. So what Nevin and I are looking for are colors. What colors have they used? What are supplementary colors? So this teal and that yellow. And we make sure that we note all of that down, and we use that with the actual branding of the Bracken sites that we put together. So I've talked to you about this before, but there is an addition that you can get to Google Chrome that's called ColorPick. So if you don't have a marketing department, you don't have a brand guide, but you have a website that you like, or perhaps that you don't have a branding strategy whatsoever. You may be a very new company and you're looking for ideas. If you come across someone who's done their website really well and you like their color scheme, you can use that color palette tool to grab the actual color information off of the website directly. So this is a really, really quick way to get the hex code that you want for a specific color, so you can reuse that later on. So Nevin and I will often note down any of the colors that are used. We try and figure out what kind of fonts have been applied. The most important thing for looking at how we use this in conjunction with the modules is what is the font hierarchy like. So I've alluded to the concept of the font hierarchy before in other sessions, but we'll go through it here as well. Your font hierarchy is how do you change elements of a font's display to depict the importance of a specific bit of information. So for example, COVID-19 response would be your most important thing. Beneath that is your subtitle, and then beneath that again is the button. So this is more of your action element. This is what you're trying to get people to pay attention to though. So what we'll do is look at how is font hierarchy applied for that client. Most of the time you have a difference in size between level 1 and level 2, but also there can be a difference in weight. So that's the bold aspect of it. Your button font is also really important because we use that to just determine how do we want to design buttons if we're using them on the slides. So you'll see that this font is different again because it's all caps and it's also bold but quite smaller than the subtitle text here. So we note all of this down and we end up with this nice little map of information to kind of help us figure out how we want to brand something up. So alongside this, some clients will also have PowerPoint templates that they've set up, and they'll provide those to us for setting up kind of template slides on their own Bracken site. Right, so once you've kind of got a feel for how the branding needs to work for your organization, you may already have a convenient brand guideline available that'll walk you through all of this. The next thing that you want to do with your e-learning specifically is make sure that your site is set up so that you're pulling those elements through onto your modules. So I'll hop over to the SPCA Bracken site, and I'm going to run you through what we refer to as template slides. So this is a feature that you all have access to, whether you know it or not. You may not have gone through a site branding with us when this feature was available. So if you don't see this, I can tell you how to set them up. A template slide is available under the Page tab, and then you should see it sitting right here. It's a little drop-down menu that will give you pre-formatted slides that you can pick from. All of these slides are actually part of a module that is just called template slides. So if you don't see this little drop-down menu, all you need to do is log in as your author account. First of all, double check that you don't have a template slides module. So go and switch to all authors if you have multiples and scroll down here. If you see one called template slides, that's the one you want to edit. If you don't have one, you just create a new one and you call it exactly that, template slides. That's all you have to do to turn that on. So it's a little bit of a hack, and you can only have one of them. So don't try and have two, it won't work that way. You can only have the one. But if you're missing a module here called template slides and you want to use it, you just make the new one titled exactly that, and that feature will turn on for you. So as an example, if we hop in here, SPCA, they like their branding to fall through all of the content that they do. This is a really, really great way to make sure that everything that you make feels at home with everything that you're doing. It's a really, really effective strategy to make things look polished. You'll notice with the sites themselves, your logo is always going to be here. And we can also redesign the backgrounds for these pages if you need kind of imagery available for the users to set kind of like as a background. But the logo is always on the page. You don't really need to include it in the module as well because it's already there. What you want to do is pull through design elements to make your branding fit with that logo and make it really come to life here. So using your colors appropriately, using your font hierarchy appropriately, and including different design elements that you may already have available. So for the SPCA, they use this kind of circular figure with some silhouettes, and they provided that to us as a PowerPoint slide, I believe. So what we did for them was set out a couple of different slide types that they're generally using when they set their content up, but also pull through some of those design elements from the PowerPoint slides so that they can use these as backgrounds for other modules that they're making. So what you'll see when you're using the template slides, here where I've got title slide, that will appear there. And I believe, here we go. So what you need to do to set those cell titles, the title slide, or sorry, the titles for the slides up, is you would go through and select the specific box that you want to use as the title, and go to cell style and click cell as slide title. That will change what appears here. It also changes what appears here. So that's how these references are created, by whatever cell has been indicated as the title for that specific slide. So once you've got your module created, you then work your way through and you build up a collection of slide designs that you know you're going to reuse. The most common ones that we see repeated over and over again will be the actual title slide. So what do you want to call it? What's the introduction? What's a run through on what they're going to be doing? And then you work your way through some of the content layouts. And then you get to, how do I want my questions to look? So for SPCA, they have a question slide. You guys will be very familiar with this kind of layout. We use this quite often now with the white background in the middle. They have a question slide. They have a layout for a drag and drop that they can just grab really quickly and reuse. And then for those of you who have content where you need the user to physically fill something out or sign it, this is another way to kind of include this element in your modules as well. So you would include some sort of instruction. For example, let's say you want them to provide a form of some sort. They need to fill a form out and they need to physically sign it. You could link a PDF to that form to a button that's just an image that looks like a button. That's all this is. You link that by going to double click on that image, and then you go to media and change, and then you upload whatever form you want, and you link the PDF, and then you select download. And what happens is as the user works their way through, they get to this slide, they'll have some instructions here about what you're asking them to do. They download the form, they fill it out, they upload it back to their computer, and then they can actually add it back to this module using this upload feature here. So this is actually just an interaction. That's all that that is. Again, if you need to find it, go to add, interaction, uploaded media. So this is a method we've used a couple of times when we have people who, clients who come to us who want something where they've collected a signature. We've also used this where they want, for example, a user's driver's license on file. So it's a good way to get additional information from people without having them kind of freeform fill out things. So a really nice method to use. And again, this is something that they use repeatedly throughout a bunch of modules. So this made its way to the template slide layout as well. And then after that are a bunch of backgrounds. So these can be used however you want. They're up for grabs, and that's just kind of how they get pulled through. So the way that this works is when you're working your way through a module, let me exit that, and I'll hop into this test one. When you're
sorry to interrupt, just to clarify, so we can go and change those template slides. We don't need you to do them for us.
If you have access to the module, yes. If you don't have access and you want it, let me know and I'll make sure that you have correct access permissions for it, because sometimes we make it as the admin account, yeah, and just go through and design them really quickly. But if you guys want control over it, by all means, and you already have them, just give me a shout and I'll make sure that you own it.
Cool. Okay. So I don't need to send the email I was about to send you with a whole bunch of changes to the template.
No, you're all good. Right. So the way that these get used is when you're going through an authoring, you will see this template dropdown. Select the one that you want. So let's say we want to grab that question slide. And what it does is it copies over all of those elements onto this slide for you to work with. So from here, you just go through and you change this question text. You can go through and change the interaction. And it's literally just a copied version. So you're not affecting anything on the template module itself. You're just grabbing copied elements of what you have there to work with. So that is a really quick run through on ways that you guys can use that feature to make your authoring faster, but also to make sure that everything fits within your branding. And I know that the design concepts themselves are often really, really hard for people to figure out how to include that on a slide. And we're here to help you with that. So if you find that you want to have slide templates that look really flash and you just can't quite figure out how to get things to lay out properly, get in touch with your account representative and we can set up a quick training session. You guys all have allocated hours for use annually. You might as well use some of our time effectively in that fashion to kind of give you a good foundation to work off of. And if you find that you've got older template slides, you want them redone, we're more than happy to help you with any rebrandings or refreshing or anything you're stuck with, really. That's what we're here to help with. So again, really short session today. I just wanted to run through that concept because that was a question that I got asked recently, but also one that I do get asked pretty regularly. So I'll pause here and see if anyone has any questions about that or anything else for that matter.
I had a question. Can you go through how to do a analysis interaction?
Yeah.
Where you have to do it, just because I've figured it out a couple of times, but it always takes me like a long time to actually remember how to do it.
It's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah.
Bit of a tricky one. Yeah, let me share my screen again. Okay. So what Danica's asking about is our analysis tool that you use within a module. So examples of how this could be interpreted would be if you're for health and safety, for example, you may have a video or an image of someone performing a procedure either correctly or incorrectly, and you want the user to review that and indicate using markup tools what's right or wrong. But it can also be used with a user themselves uploading a video or an image of themselves or of something that they've set up and then annotating their own work. So 2 different ways you can use it. I'll show you the first way first because that's easiest. And I'll go through how to set up the back reference interaction for those as well. So for starters, what we'll do is create our analysis tool. So usually I try to set these up with some sort of instruction. So I always have a header. And then the body text is usually instructions. It's always important to include instructions with this interaction because you just never really know how you're going to want to use it, and give people a little bit of a clue about what you're asking for. So your instructions usually sit there. And then to add it, you go to add interaction, analysis. Now you'll notice there's 2 different options here, single and dual. For 99.9% of you, you'll just want single analysis. The difference between the 2 of them is that dual analysis allows you to compare 2 things at once. So 2 images at once, 2 videos at once. Single analysis is you're focused on just one. The dual analysis is really only useful when you have an image or a video that is almost exactly the same. So it was developed originally to work on how you analyze, for example, Mary will appreciate this, how you analyze a golf swing. So you would have a professional example where someone's doing it correctly, and then you may have an example of yourself performing a golf swing or someone else, and then you can critique the 2 of them against one another. But most of the time, people want to use this as a way to kind of engage the learner with a specific thing. So just checking over an entire process, not necessarily comparing it to something. So single analysis is usually more than enough. So for this example, we'll go single analysis. From there, you need to have a video or an image to use. So this account, I don't have any videos on it. So I will go up here to this drop-down menu and I'll switch to images. And I will grab, this is the admin account, so it's a bit funky. So we'll grab this guinea pig. And that is the image that I want my users to look at. From here, I usually smush this kind of down in the corner and scooch it over a little bit. So this analysis tool, you can't resize it. It is what it is, and that's the size that it stays. But you can move it around on the page so that you've got a little bit more flexibility and room on this side. So once you get it where you roughly think you want it, hit save, go to preview, and you'll see that you've got a little tool menu here, and you can kind of roughly see where this is laid out. So you may decide you want it down a little bit further. Now, 2 different things that you can do with this. You can have this as an interaction that the user adds something to, or that they're marking your example. So in this case, they're marking my example. So I've given them something already to analyze. From here, you're either submitting your markups as a user to a facilitator, and then that facilitator looks at what you've marked up and determines if you've answered correctly or incorrectly, or you can set this up as what we call a back reference, where you can compare your answer with what the author indicates is the correct answer. And then you can answer a really simple multi-choice question that indicates, you know, I did well, I didn't do very well. So if you want to use this for formal assessment, I recommend the first option. And if that's the case, your setup is done. You have the analysis tool there, you have the capture button on the screen, which is this thing here, and the users can go through and mark it up, capture their image, they're off and running. If you want to use this as a back reference, that's more of a reflective learning approach. So you're asking them to reflect back on what they've said and compare it against what you're indicating is correct, and then determine how well they've done from there. So the way that you use this as a back reference, once you've set it all up, you'll need another page. And this page can be directly after the one you're working on, or it could be at the end of the module. So you can have this set up at the very, very beginning to say, here's a picture of this surgical suite that's all set up. Do you see anything that's out of place? And ask people to circle things that are out of place. And then you might run them through an entire module that goes through, here's how you set up a surgical suite. And at the end, you're asking them to look at what they said at the beginning and see if they've missed anything, for example. That's a way that you could use this kind of back reference style. But yes, nonetheless. So for the back reference aspect of it, same thing again, you want a header. Headers for these, you usually want to indicate what you're asking someone to do. So I usually say something like, check your answer, or check my answer, along those lines. And stick that up there. Format it up properly. Set it up as the slide title. And then my instructions are usually exactly the same for every single one. It's compare your answer on the left with the correct answer on the right. And they're always laid in that order. I'm going to feel real silly if I got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're always in that order. And so I'll leave that up there. Now what you want to do is make your back reference. So to do that, come over here, grab the actual capture button. You go to add, click copy, go to the slide you want the back reference on, and click reference. So what you'll see is this funky little box. That little back arrow is the back reference arrow, mimicked up here. And then this is the icon for the capture tool. So back references you can use with multiple different interaction types. You can use them with the analysis tool. You can use them with radio buttons, checkbox interactions, multi-line text boxes, another really good one for reflective learning there. And drop-down menus. And I don't think, you can't use them with drag and drops because it's a little too complicated. But yeah, you've got a lot of variety that you can use this kind of concept for. So I'll grab that and I'll make that a wee bit bigger. And then the last thing that I do is add on a way for them to give themselves some sort of score. So this is usually in the form of a radio button interaction. And I usually will say something like, how did you do? And you give them a couple of options. So I nailed it, or not so great, something like that. It could be as many as you want. And from here, you can also decide, are both of these answers correct? Is only one correct? It's not a real fail-safe option, to be fair. You should be aware of that. Like your user could just go through and say, oh yeah, I nailed it, even if they got it wrong. So it's sometimes a nice idea to just have this actually worth no points at all. And you're just asking them to reflect on what they've learned. So you can use it however you want, but just keep that in mind that you're not preventing any kind of cheating here if you do it like this. Yeah, so now the last bit that you want to do is set up your correct answer. And this is where it's a little bit weird because it's a wee bit of a hack for the system. What you'll do is on the authoring area for the analysis tool, you hit the play button. And then you want to create the correct answer. So let's say my question is point in the direction the guinea pig is looking, something like that. From there, I'll go to capture, and you'll see that my correct answer sits on top of the analysis tool. So to make that go away, this is where it gets weird, you actually want to take that answer and indicate that it's incorrect. This has no effect whatsoever on the user's score because this is not a question that can be auto-marked. Very important to understand that. Any of these capture buttons cannot be auto-marked. They have to be marked by someone. So setting that up as an incorrect answer affects nothing. It just hides it from this view. Once you've done that, what you'll see is previewing as a learner, you can indicate, capture, and again, always test these to make sure you set them up right. Hit check answers. And then when you go to the next page, you'll see your answer on the left with the correct answer on the right. And then you can mark yourself on how you've done it. So again, if you want to set this up so that it's just an assessment and they're not marking themselves, once you've set that slide up, you are done. The summary page will render that image for the marker, and the marker assigns a score to it and can comment against it. But if you want to use this reflective concept, then you need to set that secondary slide up. Now, I did mention in the beginning that there's a way to use this tool where a user provides their own media to use. And that is just a slightly different kind of form of setup, really. So we might go through that one in a different example. If you guys really want to see it, I can keep going. But most of the time, people want to use this in a fashion where they're asking someone to kind of mark the example that they've provided for them. Any questions about that massive dialogue of instruction that I just gave you?
No, that's good. Thank you.
No worries. It is a really handy tool. I've seen people use it a couple of different ways. And when you get into the video analysis aspect of it, that's where the company started, was with video analysis. So we've got a lot of functionality there that often doesn't get used with some of this newer content that's coming out. But it's there. Like most of it's around sports analysis. So Murray can attest to this. There's a lot of measuring of angles and distances, and it's really in-depth stuff that's already included in the platform. It's just often you don't need to measure angles on a health and safety assessment, so you don't end up using those, but they're there if you need them. I guess you could if you were trying to measure someone's like if you're working on like a manual lifting thing and they have to have their knees at a certain angle or something, you might be able to use it for that. But anyway, that's fine.
We've used it a couple of times in our ones, and it's one thing that people always comment on is that the drawing tool is really cool. So
yeah,
so
it really
makes me think we should use it more often.
Yeah, by all means. I've seen really interesting ways for use. That one of my favorites was kind of like somebody had an example of a work area that was set up with a bunch of hazards, and the users had to go through and circle the hazards that they saw. That one's quite good. You can use it for like soft skill analysis as well. So if you've got people that you're training to talk to customers, you could have them submit a video of themselves performing like a mock conversation, and then you can give them some feedback on how they've performed and provide a formal mark against it. So it's really flexible, really cool too. All right, bonus content, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from anybody?
Oh,
No, rocking and rolling.
no.
Okay.
Good. Thanks a lot, Lauren.
No worries. Murray, do you want to hang out for a wee bit, or do you have to go? Because I can answer your other question if you want.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, look, I've got a couple of minutes, so if you want to have a crack at answering it quickly, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Cool. I'll pull it up. Everyone else, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. You guys stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
You too.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for the cute puppies and kittens.
Yeah, and thanks to SPCA for letting us use their stuff. Thank you.
Anytime, Lauren.